Pastor Jessica, and you've made it. It's the last lesson in our Grow series, and I'm so thankful that you've just hung in there and you've built community, hopefully had an opportunity to get to know other people, laughed, cried, grown in the Lord, but mostly just found Jesus through all of these lessons. And I want to dive into our next subject, and that's courage. And I love this subject because courage has a really great definition. And I think at the end of the day, most of us all want to be really courageous people. And most of us probably are really courageous people. And I want to define courage so that we have a really strong foundation to build off of some of the points and the person that we're going to be talking about, which is Daniel. So let's define it. Courage is the choice and willingness to confront agony, pain, danger, uncertainty, or intimidation. What I love about that definition is that it really has nothing to do with your feelings or being fearless. Think about it. Courage is the choice and willingness to confront. And let that definition be freeing to you, because if you are wrestling with fear of agony, pain, uncertainty, or intimidation, it's okay. You can simultaneously be courageous and fearful at the same time. Think about that for a second. And you don't have to wait for your feelings to feel good about being courageous. You can be courageous and feel scared, totally intimidated. You can feel completely overwhelmed. You can feel stressed out, and you can still be courageous. I love that. And courage has everything to do with your willingness to choose to confront that which would keep you limited, living life based off of comfort, safety, convenience, and painless. Isn't it amazing when we face something that might feel painful, we immediately want to cower, run away, limit ourselves, and courage says, no, I'm going to choose to confront that which is in front of me. And chances are, if you've ever confronted these things in your life, right? I think everybody that's watching this lesson has probably confronted pain, agony, danger, uncertainty, or intimidation. Maybe unwilling, but you've still done it. You've confronted it. Then congratulations, you are courageous. And the Bible has to say in Joshua 1:9, have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous, do not be frightened and do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Psalm 27:14, wait for the Lord, be strong and let your heart take courage. Wait for the Lord. Now let me ask you, have you ever thought about what the opposite of courage is? It's not fear, right? Because we already determined that you can be fearful and courageous at the same time. And that's not really cowardly, because what does even cowardly mean? Even though a lot of people would say, the opposite of courage is cowardice. But think about what is happening when you are courageous. You're choosing to confront something. So when you're choosing to not confront something, you're actually choosing to conform to something. So in essence, the opposite of courage is conformity. It's you saying, what is happening right now, that most powerful, influential person, moment, idea, opinion, or truth makes me want to conform to what it's asking of me. And courage is saying, no, I'm choosing to confront the uncertainty instead of the conformity. Now let's talk about Daniel. He's our character in the Bible today. But before we talk about Daniel, I want you to hang tight to these three words: courage, confront, and conform. They're going to go along with us in the next parts of our points and the story. You've probably heard about Daniel in the Lion's Den, right? It's a childhood classic in a Sunday morning service. He is the epitome of a story when it comes to doing something that you're scared to do and standing up. And I love Daniel because he refused to conform to a king named Darius, who made an executive decision to put the full weight of the law behind any person who made a request or worshiped anything other than him, the king. See, Daniel sounds a lot like a man who refused to conform, and so he willingly confronted every uncertainty that he faced because he was courageous. So I want to tell you the story of Daniel very briefly, and then we're going to read just a few verses, just for sake of time. See, Daniel was a man who had a lot of power and influence. He was a ruler, and he oversaw a massive kingdom, and he would be what we would call today like a prime minister, here where there's a king above him. However, he had the main influence over an entire kingdom or country or a nation. Daniel was a man who served God and loved God. Now, because of his influence, because of his faithfulness, because of his courage, because of his integrity, King Darius loved Daniel. But because of this incredible influence, his peers, Daniel's peers, who were also ruling and leading alongside of him, did not like him. And so they tried to find a way to remove Daniel from his position, but they could not find anything because Daniel was a man of integrity who feared the Lord. So they actually went to King Darius and they stroked King Darius's ego like nobody's business. And they were like, King, make a law for the next 30 days that says if anybody worships or makes a request to any other god or any other person other than you, that they will be executed. King Darius's pride would have been served up on a golden platter. He was so excited that let's make this law that everybody has to come to me and worship and make a request and honor me. So he signs this law into existence. Now, it's so interesting to note that Daniel was not amongst these rulers when they came to the king and asked him to create this law. There was a goal, there was an agenda. So when the king signed the law into existence, Daniel found out about it. And guess what Daniel did? He went home and he prayed to God. Daniel didn't make a social media post blasting those in authority and those his peers for the decision that they made. He didn't whine. He didn't wallow in self-pity. He didn't even necessarily shake in his boots. He went home and he prayed to God Almighty. And these peers that were trying to trap Daniel saw him pray. So guess what? They went back to King Darius and said, guess what? Daniel, he did exactly what you said in this law nobody could do. The king was distraught. And he tried to find a loophole for Daniel, and he couldn't. And he knew that once he set something into motion, it had to be fulfilled. So that meant he had to take Daniel out of his leadership position, throw him into the lion's den, put a huge stone over it, and watch this man that he trusted, that he loved, that he respected, who was somebody that ruled over this kingdom, possibly die. And let's go over to Daniel 6, verse 19. And it says, then at the break of the day, this is the next day after Daniel was thrown into the lion's den. Then at the break of the day, the king arose and went into haste to the den of lions. And as he came near to the den where Daniel was, he cried out in a tone of anguish. And the king declared to Daniel, O Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to deliver you from the lions? Then Daniel said to the king, O king, live forever. Isn't it amazing? Daniel honored the king even in that moment. He says, O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths, and they have not harmed me because I was found blameless before him, which is God, and also before you, O king. I have done no harm. Then the king was exceedingly glad and commanded that Daniel be taken up out of the den. So Daniel was taken up out of the den, and no kind of harm was found on him because he had trusted in his God. And the king commanded, and those men who had maliciously accused Daniel were brought and cast into the lion's den. Isn't it amazing? This story that unfolds, Daniel honoring God, honoring his king at all costs, even his life, thrown into a den of lions. I couldn't even imagine. And there he remains, and God delivers him through a miraculous way of shutting the mouth of the lions. And the next morning, the king comes to rescue him and finds that Daniel is still alive. And here's what we can draw from courage and from Daniel's life. And the first thing is this: Daniel refused to conform to a life of duplicity and courageously lived with integrity. What's the definition of integrity? It's doing the right thing when nobody's looking. And let me just tell you, if you are a person of integrity, it's not very popular these days. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage to not conform to living a life where you look one way in this environment and another way in this environment. You know, social media can make us look really good even when we probably don't deserve it. All the highlight reels. But really what's going on behind closed doors, when you put the phone down, when you're alone, when it's just you and God. Because God sees and knows everything. And just like Daniel's life, he willingly confronted the uncertainty of losing popularity and acceptance by his peers and received God's favor instead. Isn't it amazing that God blessed him and took care of him every step of the way, even when he was faced with so much loss on a social level, so much loss on a popularity level, and so much loss on a moral level. You know, if you honor God and his word, chances are you're not going to always be the most popular person. Chances are that if you are a single person and waiting for a godly mate to come into your life and you choose to live a life of purity, you're going to have a lot of criticism or flack that's going to come your way. Why? Because society would tell you, do this, do that, have friends with benefits. It's okay to have a one-night stand. It's okay to continue to have a relationship that doesn't honor God. But Daniel was the type of man who courageously confronted the uncertainty of losing popularity and acceptance. But you know what he got instead? God's favor. And let me remind you, in it all, that God's favor will always outlast man's favor. And that's what you want. The second thing we can learn from Daniel is this. Daniel refused to conform to an influential king, King Darius, and courageously served the one true God. He willingly confronted the intimidating and powerful men by anchoring himself to God through prayer. What happened when he was faced with the loss of his life, when he was faced with this King Darius saying, you have to do this, when he was faced with authority figures telling him to think this way, do this way, live this way, say these things, post this way, live your life this way. If you don't do it this way, then you are not a good person. If you don't subscribe to this thinking, then you are not a good person, or you are not a righteous person, or you are not an accepting person, or you are not a moral person. That is what society and influential people in authority around us want us to know. But let me remind you that when you draw your strength to confront the intimidation of people, it will only be by the power of God. You cannot get it from anybody else. You cannot get it from any 5-step process or from a blog or from a book. You can only get it through prayer, through your time with Jesus. Daniel anchored himself through prayer. What did he do? He went straight up to a room and he prayed. Isn't it amazing? And he gave thanks to God for everything that he was facing. He did not run to this place over here. He did not go over here and try to seek out this. He went straight to God first. It takes courage to anchor yourself in prayer. And I want to remind you that anything good that you have ever experienced in your life is because somebody has prayed for you. You have prayed for something, or you are currently praying through something. Prayer changes everything, and it takes courage to be a man or a woman of prayer. And it takes courage to say to somebody, you know what? Let me not give you my opinion on that right now. Let me not give you an answer on that right now. I'm going to go and pray. I'm going to go and take some time away with the Lord and really seek his face. I'm going to get into the word of God, and I'm going to see what God has to say about these things. And I'm going to also give thanks to God. See, the third thing that we can learn from Daniel is this, that he refused to conform to the fear of physical loss, which was death for him, and courageously trusted in God's plan for his life. You have to think about the story for a second. He was literally looking at choosing to serve the Lord or lose his life. And it wasn't just like this quick, clean death. It was like tossed into a den of lions. That feels very scary to me. If I knew I was facing my death from a den of lions, I'd be like, Lord, is this the way you're having me go out right now? Like, is this really the way that I'm going to die? I'm going to get torn apart by lions? See, Daniel, he faced the loss of his life, but he courageously trusted God's plan for his life. He knew that if he was going to go into the den of lions, that what God's outcome was the best plan ever. I want to challenge you today. Have you ever been in a situation where you are fearful of losing something, losing a comfort, a safety, a security, or an avenue, a job, even looking at something in your health-wise, and you're just like, you know what? I'm going to trust the Lord with the outcome of this. Maybe it's taking a step of faith into something, but you're losing a secure job, salary, payment, money, and risking people's opinions because you've worked so hard to get to where you're going, but you're like, you know what? I trust God's plan for my life more than I trust a king, more than I trust somebody in authority, more than I trust these wild animals who can tear me to shreds in a minute. I trust God's plan for my life and the outcome, even if it means death. There will come a point in your life where you will have to choose who you're going to serve. And it might feel like you are suffering because of the choice to serve Jesus and to believe in the full gospel of Jesus that is written in the Bible. And you might fear about losing lots of things, but I want to tell you, it takes courage to trust God's plan for your life. See, Daniel willingly confronted potential danger, pain, agony, because he would face with confidence God's character and his own. Let me say that last part again. He willingly confronted the potential danger, pain, and agony he would face with confidence in God's character and his own. See, courage for Daniel was not because he had a 5-step program for how to cultivate courage in your life. Courage for Daniel came from trusting in God's character. Daniel knew God so well through his time of prayer and his time of seeking him that he had such confidence in him that he could be courageous. Because here's the thing, if he was going to go down, he was going to go down for Jesus. See, if you're going to go down courageously for Jesus. And he knew that God would honor his faith no matter what. And God had character in place that Daniel was so confident in. See, are you confident in God's character for your life? Do you trust him when he says something in his word? You're like, I believe that about God. I believe what he said he's going to do in my life. And that's the thing. If you lose everything, you will never lose by being courageous for God. Proverbs 14:26 says this, in the fear of the Lord, one has strong confidence. And his children will have refuge. Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare, not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. Hebrews 4:16, let us with confidence draw near to the throne of grace that we may have received mercy and find grace to help in the time of need. Hebrews 13:6, so we can confidently say, the Lord is my helper. I will not fear. What can man do to me? 1 John 5:14, and this is the confidence that we have toward him, that if we ask anything according to his will, he hears us. And this is where I want to land. The pathway from conformity to confidence in God is courage. If you are tired of conforming and you want to step up in courage, you, my friend, have to have confidence in who God is in your life. You have to trust that when you spend 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes a day with the Lord, that you are building confidence in God. And what happens is the exchange of courage comes into play in your life so that when you face and you confront every intimidation, pain, fear, agony, rejection, loss, all of it, you do so with courage. You do so with a courageous spirit that is only found in confidence in God. I want to say it again. The pathway from conformity to confidence in God is through courage. Thank you for hanging in there. Thank you for taking the journey with me about Daniel and courage. And now what we're going to do is we're going to turn the lesson back over to your group leaders where they have discussion time, discussion questions. And I am so thankful for you. And I am praying that you would experience courage that comes directly from your confidence in God Himself. We love you. Thank you for staying with us in this growth series, and we'll see you next season.